All right. So, jumping in here, and thanks again for joining us. We're going to look at, of course, those two strategies, which are applicable to all tiers of three-tiered models of prevention. And our team, of course, researches the comprehensive integrated three-tiered model of prevention, or Ci3T. That's an expanded form of MTSS, a multi-tier system of support, expanded to include that social emotional well-being domain. So you see down at the bottom there, the triangle, we got academic and behavior, which are always part of MTSS models. And Ci3T adds the social emotional well-being domain, so that expansion there. Tonight's content is applicable to all tiered models, or even if your school doesn't have a three-tiered model in place, you can still use behavior-specific praise and pre-correction in your classroom, around campus, at home with friends and loved ones and everyone. So those strategies are going to be applicable anywhere. They're just more efficient, more effective if you have a school-wide system in place like Ci3T. And just a little bit about Ci3T and tiered models in general. We want to, of course, have that high quality instruction happening at tier one for all students. So at that systems level, we're having integrated teaming taking place rather than an academic team and a behavior team and a social team. No, all those elements are together in each child. So we have an integrated team that looks at the data and selects validated curriculum that align with district and state standards to deliver that high quality instruction, which we're going to monitor and make sure it's in place, of course. And then for the behavioral domain, we've got the positive behavioral interventions and supports, which isn't a curriculum that you can buy. It's a framework that you have to build as a team. And one of the ways we do that is by, in the Ci3T model, we survey all adults in the building, all the faculty and staff with the school-wide wow, I'm blanking on it, Kathleen. It's the school-wide expectations survey for,
I taught David how to
see,
stumble on that part. I never remember the name of
school-wide
that.
expectations survey for specific settings, the SES.
Woo!
It's a survey that goes out to everybody. It's got 144 items on it. It's amazing. But it lets all the adults give their opinions as to which behaviors are critical for success across 7 different settings around the school. So academic and non-academic settings, because we need to know in the hallway, in the cafeteria, even in the restrooms, what are the expected behaviors. So we build that, and then those go into the matrix when we get all the adult input. So you see the example matrix there, posted everywhere around school. We teach those explicitly, just like academics. We give students opportunities to practice meeting those expectations, and we reinforce those expectations when they're met with behavior-specific praise, the strategy we're going to look at tonight, and paired that with tickets, some universal reinforcement system. So with that behavioral domain in place, we can see more of the behaviors we want to by reinforcing them. And if we kind of ignore minor misbehaviors and whatnot, those will diminish and go away as we reinforce the ones we want. And then that third domain, that social emotional well-being, similarly, we look for validated curricula and based on what their school's needs are. So we might use the What Works Clearinghouse you see there. If I have a bullying problem at my school, I'm going to look for an anti-bullying curriculum, one that's got sufficient evidence behind it to show that if we implement it as designed, we're going to get the desired results with our students. So we're going to focus a lot on tier one because the low intensity strategies that we're reviewing tonight, pre-correction and behavior specific praise, we want to see happening all of the time. And you'll see why as we hear our presentations from both Carrie and Grant, and Donna's going to get us started with where these strategies are situated in the Ci3T model. But with tier one for all, and in the background of all of that, we've got strong tier one in place as we're looking at these strategies. Behind them as we're doing them, we got strong tier one. And there's lots of resources available on the ci3t.org webpage in those enhancing Ci3T modules tabs specifically to help you build your tier one program and to maintain it, make sure it's implemented with integrity and stays at that high integrity. So lots of resources thanks to IES and the funding that we've had to build those. And while we're talking about tier one and these strategies fit there, they can be intensified for tier two because we know some students are going to need more than what tier one provides. So we've got modules onto the tier one process, as well as how to intensify these low intensity strategies like what we're focusing on tonight for tier two, as well as they can be a component in tier three, which is those are reserved for students with the most intensive needs, often individualized, but could be small group with a high dosage to get that intensity up there. But just because we know what to do at tier one, two, tier and tier three, doesn't mean that it's always in place. So we need to monitor it. So all tiered models have these essential components. They should be checking for social validity, treatment integrity, and using universal screening. Meaning, what do people think of the goals, procedures, and outcomes of the school-wide plan? That's social validity, which often predicts treatment integrity. Is the plan in place as it's designed? We definitely want to know that tier one is happening before I can tell parents your child needs a tier two or tier three support. We can do that when we know they're getting high quality tier one. And then that systematic screening for academics and behavior are some of the main data sources we used to detect students at the first sign of concern and connect them to those tier two and tier three supports, as well as getting a snapshot for how are we doing at tier one for everyone. So if you haven't already, go register for those enhancing Ci3T modules on the ci3t.org/enhance page. And just remember to wait a few minutes after you finish before opening up a module. But there's tons. I think I've lost count. I think we're at 45 modules or so there to support all of your implementation efforts at your tiered models. And these are part of a sequence that's coordinated for professional learning throughout the year and lots of resources. So tonight, our outcomes are expected to give you the knowledge for those two strategies, as well as that there are other strategies out there. So we're going to connect you with resources for more. And specifically, give you the step-by-step process for implementing behavior-specific praise and pre-correction in your classroom or your learning context, where that might be, as well as stressing the importance of monitoring those interventions, they're being put in place with integrity. And what do people think of the plan before and after? So you're not designing a plan that's embarrassing for students, for example. And how are student performance data showing the success of the plan? If you are a school that may be using the new version of the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, the TFI, we're going to make some explicit connections to the new items on this. So such as for tier one, item 10, classroom practice, it specifically mentions specific feedback, like specific praise. So here we are, we're learning that. And then for tier two, item 5, options for tier two interventions. Both of these strategies tonight can be intensified and become tier two supports. Our agenda, we're going to give you that orientation to Ci3T a little more in depth. Donna's going to do that. And then we got behavior specific praise and pre-correction, which Carrie and Grant are going to introduce. And then Kathleen Lane will wrap us up and connect us to what's coming next in this series. And if you'd like some resources, there are, of course, modules that we're going to get you into. You'll see icons in the corner whenever anything we're talking about is in one of those enhancing modules. But if you go to the professional learning tab of ci3t.org, and just where you found the flyer and the registration link, there's an accordion. If you expand the fourth one, this is session 4, and these all stand alone. Inside that session, you'll see tonight's PowerPoint if you'd like to download it and take notes on it, annotate it, as well as some other resources on the ci3t.org professional learning tab. And if you're here tonight for getting professional learning with a district, you can get certain credits depending on where you're at. Let us know if you're interested in having us connect with your district and set up some agreements so you can get some credit for attending tonight. We'll always email you a thank you and a certificates available from that when you complete or as you go. There's a link to get a certificate as well as an evaluation you'll see at the end. And if you're in Kansas, you can actually earn double and triple PD points by not just learning the knowledge from tonight, but going and applying it and measuring its impact. So we're happy to review any of those materials before you submit those. Just let us know. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Donna.
So I'm going to be talking about situating teacher-delivered low-intensity strategies in the Ci3T models. And we want to first start off with a resource spotlight, and that spotlight is with What Works Clearinghouse. It is a resource that spotlights teacher-delivered behavior interventions, which are research-based strategies and are part of our Ci3T model of prevention. The introduction document, I love this one right here. I share with my staff. It's a quick read, 1 page. A little longer can be a summary, but you can certainly provide this link and give it to those who want to read the full guide on the research that's behind this. We want to remember that we're going to talk about reminding students to engage in expected behaviors, and we're acknowledging students for demonstrating expected behaviors through positive attention, praise, and rewards. So David gave a great summary of our Ci3T model of prevention pyramid. Thank you, David. That was awesome. So we're going to talk about Tier 1, consisting of the 3 domains: academics, behavior, and social and emotional well-being. This provides that solid, proactive, and research-based instruction supporting all learning abilities and needs. And then, of course, Tier 2 and Tier 3 for those learners identified through your screening process, and they may be in need of some small group instruction or a little bit individualized interventions. And today we can look at how we're situating our low intensity teacher delivered strategies across the tiers. So these strategies a component of Tier 1 instruction to increase engagement and prevent those counterproductive behaviors. Tier 2, we can use it as a standalone intervention. And of course, Tier 2 and Tier 3, we can use them as a component. For example, in Tier 2, we can embed these skills into targeted skilled instruction, maybe in reading, writing, or math. And then we can also, in Tier 3, embed them in a functional assessment-based intervention, such as the FABI. All right. And then, of course, you have your implementation manuals. You're going to find these strategies in your implementation manuals under Tier 1 strategies. They're right there. All 7 are listed as your proactive evidence-based strategies to support students and active engagement. And now we actually have a wonderful overview video of the low intensity supports by Dr. Buckman of the Ci3T research team. And he's going to show us a really nice demonstration of how a teacher uses them in the classroom.
Embedding low intensity supports in daily instruction. It's almost time for the reading block in Mrs. O's class. As she begins to transition her students to the carpet, she uses Precorrection to remind them of the Lincoln Lion expectations she wants to see.
Okay class, as you're moving to the rug for reading time, remember to show respect by going right to your square and keeping your voice at a level 1.
As she sends students off to their designated areas, Miss O actively supervises the transition by moving throughout the room and keeping an eye out for students who are following the expectations so that she can acknowledge them with behavior-specific praise.
Timmy, thanks for walking right to the carpet and sitting down. Sarah, looking good sitting crisscross applesauce in your own square. Thank you.
As she starts the lesson, Miss O uses Precorrection again to let her students know what she is looking for as they work.
Alright, as we begin to learn our vocabulary words of the week, I'm looking for students to give their best effort answering the questions asked. Please remember to exercise self-control also by raising your hand if you need anything and keeping your hands and feet to yourself. Let's get started.
Throughout the lesson, Miss O uses opportunities to respond with her students by having them hold up response cards to the questions she asks. She also uses Precorrection and behavior-specific praise to help them use the cards as desired.
Alright students, let's review our vocabulary words. I'll ask you a question and you will use your response cards to show me your answer. Once the question is asked, be responsible by keeping your response card in front of you when you show your answer. Okay students, hold up your green card when you hear the correct definition of the word habitat. A habitat is what an animal eats, the name of a baby animal, the natural home of an animal or plant. Oh, I saw a lot of green cards on that last one. That's right, habitat is a word we can use to describe the place where an animal lives in nature. For example, the habitat of an alligator might be a swamp, river, or lake. Hannah, thanks for staying in your square and holding your response card right in front of you for that question.
Embedding low-intensity strategies into daily instruction helps Ms. O prevent challenging behavior from occurring and supports student engagement in the classroom.
Thank you, Dr. Buckman. All right, so now we're going to have an opportunity to do a quick review of the low intensity strategies, all 7 of them, starting with active supervision. If you would like this infographic, right up here in the right-hand corner is the module that you will find it in. That's the Tier 1 Practical Strategies for Preventing and Responding to Challenging Behavior. I think this is a great infographic to share with your staff. You can actually use it to share on a weekly basis and go through one of them at a time, or however you want to do that to support these in your Tier 1 instruction. So active supervision, frequently scanning, engaging in positive interactions, verbal and nonverbal. You can give those pre-corrections, and you're really reinforcing the desired behavior. Behavior-specific praise, statements that acknowledge and clearly state what the desired behavior is that you want, or is that you have seen. And some examples, you could say, Jesse, I've seen you showing respect for your partners by listening to their ideas, or thank you for showing responsibility by putting the science materials away. And these statements align exactly with your expectation matrix for all the areas in your school. High P request. The high P request, we want to remember that that's 3 to 5 high P requests. They're given very quickly, and then they're followed by praise. And then for compliance, you're going to provide them with a low P request. That's the desired behavior. For example, take out your pencil, get out a sheet of paper, write your name on the paper. Great work. Let's begin our independent work. Then, of course, we have instructional choice, offering students opportunities throughout the day or throughout the instructional day. You know, where do you want to? Maybe during math class, you want to give them an option. Do you want to work on the carpet in a small group? Do you want to work back by your desk? So they have options during the day. Next one is instructional feedback. You want to remember that you're giving this instructional feedback, and this is really around concepts. You've had instruction, and they're concepts that you're working towards proficiency. You want to provide how they're doing on their performance statements, clarifying misinformation. And then, of course, opportunities to respond, frequent opportunities to respond in a set time period. You want to see a number of them in a small time frame. And you can do that in different ways. You can do that by perhaps having your students do a thumbs up, thumbs down, some response cards. You could do whiteboards, you could do clickers, many different ways to get those responses from your students. And then, of course, pre-correction, one of my favorites. We're going to focus on behavior-specific praise and pre-correction today. So proactively reminding students of the expectations before entering an environment or beginning an activity. Great example here. If your children are transitioning from the classroom to perhaps the cafeteria for lunch, as they're coming into the room, the monitor might be saying to them, what are the expectations for a reminder of the expectations for the cafeteria while they're in there for lunch? All right, so we can also, as we shared, we can also use our low intensity teacher delivered strategies as standalone at the second tier. So here we have an example. In your implementation manuals, we have an example of, here's the secondary tier, behavior-specific praise, a nice description, and of course, it's also going to include what's the entry criteria. You've got your screening data. You're going to progress monitor your students, and then you also have your exit criteria. So here's your grid. And then you also have right there the behavior specific praise. This form right here is your treatment integrity checklist. And then you have your student social validity questionnaire, pre-intervention questionnaire right here. And of course, there's your data. You're going to progress monitor your students and see how they're doing. All right, and now we're going to move on to low intensity teacher delivered strategies as a component of tier 2 and tier 3. We looked at that tier 1. Now we have the ARE model that shows us how low intensity teacher delivered strategies can be embedded as part of tier 2 and tier 3. It's an intervention using this framework: antecedent, reinforcement, and extinction. And we want to make sure that with this framework, teachers can make small adjustments to what's happening before the behavior, which is right here, and then understand how the behavior is being reinforced. And then, of course, we want to minimize that undesirable behavior. All right, building capacity. One of my favorite things as a former principal is building capacity to implement these teacher-delivered low-intensive strategies. You can do standalone professional learning. You can do a book or article study. Remember What Works Clearinghouse. This is a book supporting behavior for school success. All the leaders out there, don't forget, I purchased this for all of my staff members. It was an excellent book study. You can build it into your PLCs, the videos, you can download the infographics, share them throughout your school community. You can do some independent module exploration. I used to take advantage of this for our support staff. So during our professional learning days, it was an opportunity for them to go into modules and explore the modules at their own pace. And then, of course, building on-site experts. Love that, and I loved having our staff members and our professionals do peer-to-peer observations. It's a great way to go in, see your colleague, implementing the low-intensity strategies, and then giving them time to talk about it afterwards after the peer-to-peer observation. Now we get an opportunity to do some talk time.
I appreciate the opportunity to share my favorite strategy, behavior-specific praise, with you this evening or afternoon, depending on the time zone you are in. So we're going to start with a quick video.
What is behavior-specific praise? Behavior-specific praise refers to praise statements that clearly reference the behavior someone is being recognized for after the behavior occurs. Behavior-specific praise statements differ from general praise statements, which acknowledge appropriate behavior, but do not state what behavior has been performed, such as saying, "good job" or "great work." Behavior-specific praise lets students know exactly what desirable behavior they performed, such as, "great job showing your work on your math homework," or "thank you for raising your hand." It's important to note that this strategy is meant to praise effort, not ability. For example, you would use behavior-specific praise to acknowledge how hard a student worked on a test, not how well they performed on the test. Behavior-specific praise is simple, effective, free, and requires minimal effort. It is also very flexible and can be used at each level of prevention within the Ci3T framework. At Tier 1, behavior-specific praise can be used with all students to reinforce school-wide and class-wide expectations. Students with additional behavior support needs can receive higher rates of behavior-specific praise as a Tier 2 intervention. Additionally, behavior-specific praise can, and usually is, included as a component of any Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention. A key feature of behavior-specific praise is, by definition, linking the statement to a specific behavior, such as those found in the school-wide expectation matrix and taught in social skills lessons. If a student follows a school-wide expectation or uses one of the social skills taught as part of Tier 1 efforts, We want to acknowledge those behaviors using behavior-specific praise to increase the likelihood they will perform that same behavior again in the future. It is also important to be sincere. Students are perceptive and will know when their teachers are being genuine with their praise, or when a teacher is acknowledging their behavior out of habit or routine. You want to reflect on the student's skill level when considering how to deliver behavior-specific praise. We can promote student learning of a new behavior by acknowledging completion of one aspect of the behavior, then praising behaviors that are closer to the goal until the student has mastered the desired behavior. Students who have mastered a skill can be praised for that behavior periodically to ensure they maintain it and build fluency. For more information and additional resources, please visit ci3t.org.
All right, shout out to Dr. David Royer, who is with us this evening for narrating that fabulous video. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what is behavior-specific praise. So behavior-specific praise are statements that positively acknowledge an individual for engaging in a specific desired behavior. So for example, Jonah, I really like how you got your paper and pencil out immediately after being asked. You were really prepared and on task. So we have the individual name, we have the element of praise, and then we have the specific behavior that the student engaged in to receive the praise. Now, why should you use behavior-specific praise? So one of the things that David mentioned in the video is it can be flexible. So behavior-specific praise is simple, it's efficient when delivered consistently and immediately after that desired behavior. There's no costs associated with it. It requires minimal effort to implement and to learn, and it can be used in a variety of ways. So it can be used as a tier 1 strategy to increase engagement and prevent challenging behavior. It can be used as a tier 2 intervention. It can be embedded with other tier 2 interventions, and it can be featured as a component as part of a tier 3 intervention for those students in need of additional supports. So how do you use behavior-specific praise? First, it can be used for both academics, for things like finishing a worksheet, engaging in read aloud, or non-academic behaviors such as sharing materials, asking a friend sitting on the buddy bench to play. And it's designed for behaviors that are malleable, so praising effort, not ability. And the steps, which we're going to go into detail on in a moment, are evaluating current rates of general and behavior-specific praise, identifying the behaviors we seek to reinforce, practice delivering behavior-specific praise, observing student behavior, providing behavior-specific praise in response to that student behavior, and then monitoring our level of behavior-specific praise delivery again, and then seeking student input. All right, so we have some examples of behavior-specific praise, and as Donna mentioned earlier, up in the right-hand corner of the slide, you'll see the module that these are all in. This is an infographic in the behavior-specific praise module. So examples of how we might praise academics could be something like, Jessie, thank you for being prepared by getting your math folder out during transition. Or, I love how Jessie is waiting patiently with her hand raised to be called on. And then on the other side, we have some non-examples. So these are things that would be considered general praise. Things like, great job, Jessie. You're prepared, Jessie. Way to go. These are helpful in potentially making the student feel good about themselves, but it may not help them engage in that same behavior again in the future. So behavior-specific praise, we specifically code what they're receiving that praise for. And then we have some examples also for non-academics. So these could be used in recess or after school or during PE. So things like, great job, Jesse, being a team player by sharing the ball. Or Jesse, I like how respectful you were when you asked to use the ball. All right, so now we are going to play a little game. So on this white tag board that you see on your screen, there is going to be a statement. And in the chat, you're just going to put if you think this statement is general praise or behavior specific praise. But just what do you think for this first statement? Wow, that was awesome. Do we think that this is general praise or behavior specific praise? So yes, this is an example of general praise. We don't know what they did that was awesome. So let's do another one. You are so smart. And you are absolutely right. That is general praise. That also isn't malleable. Students don't necessarily control their intelligence, so we would recommend something related to their effort or perhaps their engagement with a strategy that allowed them to find a correct answer. All right, let's keep going. Thank you for being on time. So yes, this one is behavior specific praise. They got the thank you, and we know it's specifically for being on time. All right, let's keep going. Great job picking up around your area. Absolutely. Again, behavior specific praise. They got the great job, and it was specifically for picking up around their area. All right, one more. You do a lot for our school. Thanks. Oh, you guys did amazing. This one can be a little bit trickier, but yes, this one is general praise because we don't know specifically what it is you were doing for our school. So even with adults, we want to be really specific. What are the things that they are doing that they're receiving that praise for? Is it volunteering for committees? Is it using behavior specific praise with their students? Is it modeling pre-correction to their peers? These are all things we really love and like to hear. All right, so thank you for playing our game. As Donna and David both talked about, one of the great things about the strategies we're discussing tonight is they can also be intensified and used as a tier 2 strategy. So here's an example for those of you in Ci3T implementing schools of a possible tier 2 intervention grid that might be in your implementation manual. And for those of you working in other contexts, you can certainly create something similar to this as well. And so some of the beauty of these implementation grids is we're identifying the strategy, we're describing the strategy, we're talking about how do we select a strategy for a student using data. So what is the entry criteria for this particular strategy? And then once we've implemented it, what data are we going to continue to monitor to ensure that this is an effective intervention for that student? As well as what is the exit criteria, because we want to help intervene and then reduce the level of support at some future date. All right. Also, we said that this strategy can be embedded as a component of perhaps a tier 3 intervention. So specifically looking at the ARE component, which is that antecedent reinforcement extinction. This is an example of that, specifically embedding behavior specific praise. So in this particular example, we have a student who is engaging in off-task behavior. So things such as getting out of their seat, talking to peers and adult about off-task topics, or calling out. And the function of that behavior is to obtain attention from their teacher and the paraprofessionals, and also to avoid completing their work. And so the ARE components are designed to essentially support the student in decreasing their engagement with off-task behavior and increasing their engagement with our expected behaviors. So in the antecedent adjustments, what you'll see how this aligns with behavior-specific praise is we're going to set those conditions, we're going to label those expectations. So those first two are really about providing the student a little more attention, and then those bottom three are really about, I'm going to ensure I have a poster up in class, I'm going to verbally state the behaviors I expect, and I'm going to model the behaviors I expect to kind of set the student up for success. And then in the reinforcement adjustments, that's where I'm going to use behavior-specific praise a couple different ways when the student is engaging in the expected behavior. So I'm going to provide behavior-specific praise to the small tasks or smaller parts of larger tasks that the student has completed. I'm going to give them behavior-specific praise for on-task behavior at a very high rate to keep that going. And then when we look at extinction, we can also use behavior-specific praise by specifically giving behavior-specific praise to students who are engaging in the expected behavior and not providing any attention to the student who's engaging in that off-task behavior. So just some more examples of how we can implement this. All right. So to implement behavior-specific praise, we have 7 steps that we're going to go over in a little more detail in a moment. But the steps again are, we're going to evaluate our current rates of general and behavior-specific praise. We want to know where we're starting. We want to identify the behaviors that we want to reinforce, so making sure that we understand what we are going to praise our students for, what would we like to see them engaged with. We're going to practice the delivery of behavior-specific praise because sometimes it doesn't quite roll right off our tongue unless we've had a little bit of practice. Then we're going to observe our students so that we can then in step 5 provide the behavior-specific praise in response to their behavior. Then we're going to monitor behavior-specific praise delivery. So in step 1, we talked about our current rates. In step 6, we're going to really look at when we go to implement, have we shifted those rates or maintained those rates? And then step 7, seeking student input. And on the far right of your screen, you will see an implementation checklist. So this is just one more resource you can use when you are looking to implement behavior-specific praise as a new strategy. All right, step 1. So this is really about evaluating your current rates of both general and behavior-specific praise. And so we always want to know, where are we starting? And so one of the things that you want to think about when you are evaluating your current rate is, how are you going to collect the data? So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can ask someone else to come in and observe and tell them specifically what you would like them to record. Or you can use technology of audio or video to record yourself, and then you can look at your own implementation at a later time. And then, or you can try to track your use of behavior-specific praise in real time. So for me, that would be tallying. Some people are able to do the paperclip and move it from one pocket to the other pocket, or they can move rubber bands from one arm to the other arm. I always got confused halfway through. But there's lots of different strategies you can use to monitor your own implementation in real time if you choose. Step 2, identify the behaviors to reinforce. So this should be a fairly easy step because you can lean into your expectation matrix and really think about what are the things that you in your system are looking to reinforce students for. Step 3, this is practicing the delivery of behavior-specific praise. And this is really important because it seems really easy when we talk about it. It seems really easy, like something you could go and implement tomorrow, and then you go to do it. And sometimes we find that we're too wordy or we just get jumbled, and practicing will help improve that. So some of the things to remember as you practice is we want to praise effort, not ability. we want to ensure that we're praising specific examples, not broad generalizations. We want to praise also in a variety of contexts. So we want to practice maybe that public verbal praise from the front of the classroom. And we also want to practice that private verbal praise where I'm getting beside a student and kind of whispering the praise to them. We can also practice how to use it as written feedback. So a praise note, or sometimes our PBIS tickets have a place for us to put specifically what the student did so that we can pair even verbal and written praise. On this slide, we have another resource for you. So if you look to the right, you will see that there's a document that has examples of behavior-specific praise. So if you're having a hard time coming up with some statements, you can use this and modify it for your own use. So changing student names, maybe changing the expectation, but it's just one more resource to kind of get you started. Step 4. This is one of the most important. We have to observe our student behavior. So we're really now going to take what we know and seek to implement it. And so we're going to look for opportunities to praise our students and to give them that behavior-specific praise for the great things that they are doing in the room. When we provide the behavior-specific praise, it's important. In the video, you heard David say it needs to be sincere. Our students know when we don't mean it, and it's not going to be as effective or potentially not effective at all if they don't feel that we truly are being sincere and mean our praise. It also has to be contingent on appropriate behavior. So one of the things I used to challenge myself to do in my practice is in my academic lesson plan, I would put little sticky notes of praise statements for academic behavior. So perhaps students demonstrating using a specific strategy to solve a problem. But I only got to use those if a student actually engaged in that behavior. And Grant's going to talk later this evening about precorrection that might help set up the conditions where you can use some of those statements you've written. And then we also want to ensure that we are delivering in a manner that is most appropriate for the student. So that's where we're going to think about some of our students may prefer private praise to public praise. Some of our students may prefer the praise note versus verbal praise. So knowing our students and honoring what they prefer. And then step 6, we are going to go back and we are going to monitor our delivery. So we, in the beginning, checked how frequently we are doing it. And now that we've started to implement, we're going to check back in and we can use some of those same strategies of asking a coach or a peer to observe. There's power in that also because I can go to one of my colleagues and say, hey, I've been working to implement this new strategy. Would you be willing to be my accountability partner? And I can send you my own self-collected rate, but also every now and then, would you mind just checking in and keeping me accurate? So it can kind of bring a team around you as you implement. Or again, you can always engage in that recording yourself or engaging in some of those self-monitoring options as well. One of the most important steps is seeking input of your students. So we provide in the module, in all the low intensity modules, we provide a social validity questionnaire that can be used with your students. We have a pre-intervention and we have a post-intervention, and it allows them to give you feedback regarding how they feel about this intervention. Is it meeting their goals in a manner that they are comfortable with? So there's questions on this like, would you like to receive this for meeting classroom expectations? Could it help you get more work done? Could it help you improve your grades? Could it help others in your school? Or could it help make school a happier place? And then it's an open-ended question where they can give additional information as well. but we want to ensure that if we are doing this to help benefit our students, we're also considering their input in the process. All right. So in the module, we have some additional materials that we just want to highlight. So starting on the left, that first document, the behavior-specific praise statements, I kind of already touched on. Behind it is a set of activity cards. So very similar to the activity we did in the chat. You can print it out, you can cut it up, and you can, quiz each other on, is it general praise or is it behavior specific praise? And the cool thing is when you print it out, you will see that the answers are on the back if you slice them and fold them. So it can just be a fun little warm-up activity. We've used it in professional learning. You can use it in staff meetings. Maybe it gives people an opportunity to move around the room and engage with others. In the middle is something I think that is really cool. Behavior-specific praise is not something that can just be used in the school context by educators. It can be used by anyone. And so we have some specific materials in the module that you can share with families. So this is a strategy that you can print out these graphic organizers, or you can share this video so that families can start to use this as a strategy in the home, and they'd be using it for the same reasons that we use in the school to kind of reinforce some of the expected behaviors. And then at the far right, we have 3 documents that really help assess treatment integrity and social validity, and then also looking at data over time. So one of the things, if you go into the low intensity intervention modules, is there is a progress monitoring tracking tool that allows you to insert data to create these graphs to kind of monitor it from a different perspective, because you get to see a graph from that. All right, so we are now on those 4 breakout rooms. 1 is going to be that module exploration. 2 is going to look at it at behavior-specific praise as a component of Tier 1. 3 will be as a standalone Tier 2. And 4 as a trainer or coach. So enjoy, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay. Hi, folks. Now we're going to move on to the next phase of the evening, which will be pre-correction. So my name is Grant Allen. I'm an assistant professor of special education at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. Go Blue Devils. And I'm here to chat with you about pre-correction. So let's go ahead and get started. So pre-correction. This is a very handy dandy little infographic, isn't it? And this is something that's available on the module page. Again, we designed, I'm using we very loosely here, but we have a wide-ranging team that's put in a lot of work in these modules. But we've designed these in such a way that we can, there's a lot of things you can pull from. You can think of, like, if you just want to, I want to send somebody that I know a little bit about pre-correction, let me download the flyer and send it their way. We've designed these with kind of that type of approach in mind, that however you want to go through and access this information, you can do that. So this infographic is available in the module on pre-correction. And you can download it and just keep it for yourself, send it to somebody, post it up on a wall. And so we ask ourselves, what is pre-correction? Well, pre-correction is a preventative strategy used to identify predictable contexts in which problem behavior often occurs. So it's all about providing students with prompts, supports, and reinforcement for engaging in appropriate behavior, but kind of thinking about things sort of on the front end. I like to think about this as one of the strategies that we can use to set the stage for student success, as it were. We want to hold our students, all of our students, including those with disabilities, to high expectations. It's really important. But we also need to pair that with sufficient support so that way kids can reach the expectations that we want them to. And one way to do that is to think, how am I arranging my classroom, my learning environment to facilitate that kind of success? Pre-correction kind of fits into that. So it's an antecedent-based strategy. So for our English teacher folks out there, our word parts prefix enjoyers, the ante meaning before. So this is something that we do before we get in front of students and we're working with them and talking with them. So this is something we kind of plan on the front end. What am I going to do in advance of X, Y, or Z activity to help support student behavior? So it's something we can use at tier 1. Similarly to BSP, we can use that as part of a tier 2 intervention or part of tier 3. It's quite versatile in that regard. And this has the nice fancy steps that are on the infographic as well, but I'll take a moment and go a little bit more deeper into this, or more purposefully in just a bit. So this is also in the module. This is a nice little set of examples for pre-correction, because I think folks, might think about pre-correction and associate that with maybe some of the specific behaviors that they're looking to support students with. But, what we need to remember is the C in Ci3T is comprehensive. And so a lot of these strategies can be used to meet the multiple needs of our students. So we can certainly use pre-correction as a strategy for academic supports. Maybe it's like, hey, we're working through this book. We're going to be reading this text. It's a little bit, it may be challenging for folks. So, when you're reading and you encounter an unfamiliar word, use the strategies to sound out that word, attack that word, break it down into its parts. Okay. And that can help students to use the academic skills that you've been teaching them in order to be successful in the academic sense. Of course, behavioral reminders are definitely where pre-correction can certainly shine. We're about to sit on the carpet spot, so remember to walk and keep your hands and feet to yourself, showing responsibility. Providing a prompt so that way students can be successful behaviorally in a given context. But additionally, when we consider the social and emotional well-being of our students and how we approach instructing students at tier 1, we can think about the ways that we're going to use social emotional reminders with pre-correction. So maybe, when kids are heading out to the playground, we're thinking about, okay, remember our problem solving skills that we discussed in class today. If there's a problem that comes up on the playground, what are some ways that we can solve it? So prompting students to say, hey, this is something that we've learned about how we can support our own social emotional well-being. Let's remember to use those in specific situations that we may encounter as we move through the day. So pre-correction, a great strategy that can be used to support multiple domains of student success. So let's take a brief moment, if we would, and just drop some things in the chat. How do you integrate pre-correction strategies into your lessons or daily routines? What are some things you're kind of already doing? Or what might be some opportunities that might exist to integrate some of that into your instruction or daily learning? I'll pull up the chat and see what folks have to say. Okay, so reminding students about the expectations before we begin a transition or activity. Definitely good. Expectations at mealtime, absolutely. So some visuals in the classroom, changing the environment to support future behavior. That's really nice. How to enter the music room, very good. Allowing students to model those behaviors. We'll just wait till you see step 5, I think it is. We'll see when that comes up in the implementation steps. But that's awesome. Yeah, very, very good things here in the chat. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that we can use this strategy. And as we said before, you'll probably see a lot of these kind of ideas that we're talking about kind of parallel to your own experiences. So I'm glad y'all are making these connections. Yeah, like voice level, absolutely practicing those expected behaviors. Very nice. So, tier 1, definitely a great place to start with pre-correction, but like all of our other low-intensity behavior support strategies, pre-correction can be used as its own standalone Tier 2 intervention. For schools that are implementing Ci3T that have a section at the end of their sort of school-wide manual, you can look to see, okay, what types of interventions do we have kind of in our toolkit? And you might check yours if you have one to say, well, do we have pre-correction in there? And if we don't, maybe we could add that as a potential support. And if you're looking to use pre-correction as a Tier 2 support, we want to make sure that we've got all the kind of requisite components here. Make sure that we've got a description, the data sources for like how do we make sure that we're connecting this this with how do we reduce bias and increase equity to make sure that all kids have equitable access to receive these additional types of supports. That's really important. And of course, how do we monitor moving forward, and then how do we make sure that there's an exit strategy for these? So again, great to use as part of a Tier 2 strategy or as a standalone Tier 2 intervention for a child who may need the support. So, okay, 8 steps to implementation, 8 simple steps, and you're there to pre-correct. Now, here's my little spiel about the implementation kind of steps here. I think most folks probably have been doing some sort of pre-correction, maybe without necessarily knowing about, there's just all these steps that you can do. What we're all about here kind of in Ci3T land is the idea of evidence-based practices. And we've touched on this a little bit, but, we want to make sure that when we're working with kids, we want to use effective strategies, things that we have a reasonable expectation that if we use the strategy, it's going to work. A reasonable chance it's going to work to support the student to meet their needs. And it's important for a number of reasons. One is that we don't have that much time. Like Morpheus said in the Matrix, time is always against us. And when we are working in schools, we only have 170 or so days in the year. Now, to the layman, that might seem like kind of a lot, but we know that's not a lot. So we have to be as efficient with the time that we have with our kids because they need that from us. So evidence-based practice is a way to do that. Additionally, if we want to harness the power of that, if we want to say, I want this to work for my students, one thing to ask ourselves is how do we implement it in the same way that it was demonstrated to be effective? That's where this implementation that's where the list comes in. Because you look at the list and you say, okay, this is what the people that researched this is what they did. And I'm going to try to replicate that success by following the checklist. So that's how I kind of think about these implementation checklists. I want to try to replicate the success of kind of what comes up. So let's kind of walk through it here. So, step 1, identify contexts and anticipated behaviors. So here you're thinking about what types of behaviors am I looking to reduce? What contexts am I looking to maybe modify to help support students in a given situation? That last bit is probably not too difficult for folks to think about. I immediately think about hallway time as a middle school teacher and thinking about some of the rowdy behaviors that I saw, and immediately comes to mind. But you want to think about, okay, when's a good place to use this intervention? And you want to think about what kind of behaviors you want to actually target with that. And the word operationally, that's a bit of a tricky word, but it basically means how do I define a behavior with such precision that we could that two people independently could have that definition, go into a classroom, and both independently say, the behavior occurred or not. It's having a really clear definition for what the behavior is, because something like, for example, academic achievement, that might mean a number of different things to different people. So you want to be clear about what exactly you're looking for. We recommend giving the behavior a label, a good name for it, give a definition, examples, and non-examples. So you might say academic achievement, for example, and you might say academic achievement is, we'll call it engaging in instructional tasks as requested. Okay. You might give some examples, eyes on the teacher, raising hand quietly, remaining in a chair or seated area for the majority of time, listing some non-examples and non-academic talk with peers, doodling, going to go up to get a drink at the water fountain, examples and non-examples. And of course, there's some characteristics of a clear behavior that you can see on this very, very nifty and well-crafted infographic, which, as you may have guessed, yes, it is available in the module. You can click that, download it, and help you kind of define some behaviors that you're looking to support with some of your kiddos. So let's kind of walk through this process a little bit. I'll kind of talk out loud a little bit. So if I'm thinking about, say, some of that rough housing in the hallway, maybe that's my label. Okay, that's that kind of behavior that I want to kind of make go down a little bit because I want my kids to be safe. Definition could be physical, high-energy play involving direct physical interaction between students with observable signs of enjoyment, laughter, positive verbal feedback, and the absence of injury or distress. So to differentiate it from aggressive behaviors or bullying or something like that. Okay, nice clear definition. Some examples could be pushing, shoving, tickling, wrestling, chasing, Non-examples might be walking, talking, waving, moving from point A to point B efficiently. So this is a pretty clear definition. I think if you were looking in the hallway and watching a bunch of middle schoolers walk down, you could say, all right, that's rough housing right there. This group of kiddos is fine. You could clearly see what's going on. And you might say, all right, we want to look at this as a transition to and from lunch. That's where we're going to look. Or maybe it's during dismissal time, kind of whatever it is. So this is kind of how you would approach that first step, it being very clear about what you're looking for and when you're looking for it. Step 2, determine the expected behaviors. If you are a school that is implementing Ci3T or the behavioral framework within Ci3T known as positive behavior interventions and supports, congratulations. This part is basically done for you because you've got a school-wide matrix that has all the behaviors that you want kids to see in every context of your school across your 3 to 5 major behavior expectations. So you can look to see, well, maybe in the hallway, what do I, see, you got it. There you go. What do I want them to do? Well, maybe I want them to keep their hands and feet to themselves, or maybe I want them to walk in the hallway, maybe walk quietly. These are examples that you can say, okay, this is what I want to occur in this classroom. This is what I want to reinforce and what I want to see. Step 3, adjust the environment. So here's where that pre-correcting kind of comes into play. Now we're going to begin to use change the antecedents, change the environment, and alter it to help support students. So it could be maybe changing a seating arrangement, maybe on the playground it's more structured activities, maybe that could certainly help, or maybe it's changing teachers' behavior. So maybe you're doing something a little bit differently. If I were thinking about that hallway, I might use a little bit more active supervision. Again, that moving and scanning and interacting positively with students. Okay, or maybe it's changing a schedule of some kind. Maybe it's moving an activity in a given reading class from here to there in order to make it a little bit more streamlined to support that transition time. Whatever it is, you're changing something sort of on that front end before you're actually in front of your students. So you're making these plans out before. Step number 4. Provide opportunities for behavioral rehearsal. Okay, so I said it was 5, but it was number 4. Someone had seen this, so brilliant move. But you want to give kids a chance to practice. It's like, hey, here's I want y'all to do this thing. We're going to walk in the hallways. We're going to clean up quietly. Let's give it a go. Let's practice it. Show me what you can do. And I'm going to be looking for folks who are meeting the expectations. So you give them a chance to sort of give it a dry run. So that way, when it comes time to actually engage in whatever behavior it is, they have experience and they know what they're looking for. So this would be step number 4 here, to provide that opportunity to practice. And then as they are actually in that environment and following those expectations, you want to provide strong reinforcement to students. Okay, you want to give lots of praise. You want to use your tickets paired with behavior specific praise to really reinforce those behaviors, because that's kind of where the science of the whole thing is that you're teaching the expectations, and then when they happen, you reinforce them. You provide praise, you acknowledgement, high fives. So that way you're likely to see more of it in the future. That's kind of the whole science behind it. So we want to provide that strong reinforcement to kids. I really appreciate you walking calmly in the hallway. Thank you. As they're kind of moving along. Okay. Step 6, develop a prompting plan to remind students about the expected behavior. So this could be like a gesture or a prompt. Maybe teachers are pretty good at using different gestures or prompts to signal when something happens. Maybe you're creating a new strategy with that, or maybe it's a verbal countdown. The traditional 1, 2, eyes on you, or whatever it is. I like to do the clapping thing when I'm with my college students. I just sort of clap randomly, and then some of them will like, ooh, okay, and they kind of do the clapping back because they kind of been they've been trained well. So but whatever it is, you kind of develop what this is. It could be environmental. I was reading in the chat earlier, someone was saying put up a little poster, put up a little visual. That's a great example of adjusting the environment in order to help teach the expectations. Step number 7 is that you are developing a monitoring plan to determine the effectiveness of your pre-correction. So you want to kind of answer 3 big questions here, like, is the strategy happening as intended? How do people feel about it? And are we achieving the outcomes? And there's resources on the module about how to solicit that social validity feedback from students to say, is this something that is do you enjoy this strategy? Is this working for you? Treatment integrity checklist to help us to keep track for ourselves to say, I did the strategy as intended. And this is really useful, especially in situations where maybe things don't work out, because then you can verify, well, I know that I actually implemented the strategy. So that wasn't the variable that didn't work. It's because I know I actually did it with integrity. Okay. And then we also have resources to kind of help track over time to see, using some data, how well is the strategy really working for me? And then finally, we're looking at providing students an opportunity to give feedback on the strategy. School is oftentimes something that kind of happens to our kids, so I think giving kids an opportunity to share back with you, to say that, I really like the way that you are, you're providing me with a reminder, and you're recognizing me for meeting expectations. I like that. Or if there's something that they don't like about it, you want to know that too. And then finally, just to highlight the module, we've got different resources on there as well, videos, stuff you can look and explore and kind of check out. Definitely a great resource there. So look at that transition. Very nice. Okay, so now we are going to our different rooms. And Stacy has opened up the rooms for you to find the place that you were looking for. And that's where you're going to be. So find the room that best fits your needs, and we'll see you in just a little bit.
All right. As always, I'm going to close this out by thanking you all for being here, for thinking about how to use these strategies to support the students that you serve or the adults that you serve who directly work on the front lines with kids. We're just so appreciative that you've spent this time with us tonight. So that's always our start. We have 3 strategies tonight. We heard you in your feedback asking us to work on fewer topics within an evening and going in a little more depth and having a little more time to reflect on those. So we hope that was something that felt like a good use of your time. We also want you to think about how you can take this information and move forward, move it into something that's actionable in your own context. So maybe that's trying one of these strategies or all of them with your students in your classroom, or sharing this information with others, both the information that you learned tonight, but also sharing some of the resources that you were able to look through and access and talk about in your small groups. this is just an example of what an action planning might look like. We like to be really clear about what we're trying to accomplish, but also giving a little teeth. It's like showing up at the gym and having a partner hold you a little more accountable when you put someone's name who's going to take that on and when they are going to be able to do it. And then you can check back with each other and see how that practice has supported your work. This is Project Empower. We invite you to continue this journey with us. So we are right in the middle, January 21st. Our next one is February 10th. And our own Allison Bernard will be leading us in the 6-step instructional approach for responding to challenging behaviors. So it is a treat, that one, and we hope that you'll join us. We also have Ci3T trainer and coaches calls, and these are open to everyone. They usually have a little bit of structure to them around the point in the year and a little bit of guidance just to kick off the conversation, but they really are an opportunity to come and talk with each other, chat with us, bounce ideas, ask questions, all of the things. So we invite you to join us. The next one is tomorrow, and you can find this on the website if somebody wants to drop the link in for registering for that, just so that you get the link to be able to join us. We also know that this is just the start of this work, right? And we're really thinking about both the building knowledge, but also then taking these tools into your classroom for application, and then looking at outcomes for kids. Are these working for your students in your building or the adults in your building supporting kids? And we know that if you are in Kansas, you actually this feeds right into your professional development points that you get in Kansas. I'm not sure if they're called points, but anyway, because there is credit for coming and getting some new knowledge. We know that it informs in general how you think, but also then you get to double that if you try in your classroom or in your context. And then also if you have actual data on student outcomes, that triples the impact. So we would encourage you to do all three of those. As you can see by this graphic, there are tools for you to do each stage of that implementation. So we would be happy to direct you there if anyone has questions, but please do download and try those. Make them personalized to your context. And then finally, tag us in social media, interact with us on social media. We would love to hear from you, hear how things are working in your context and how you're using them. And also you will receive this brief evaluation for your feedback. It will come from Stacy Williams with a link, and it takes just a few minutes, but we really do use this information every single time. We review it as a team. We thoughtfully consider what you're telling us, and we try to adapt so that we can best serve you. Also, we are looking for ideas for next year. So if you have a particular topic that you would like us to consider, we ask for you just to drop it in the comments section of the evaluation. And with that, I will say good night. Thank you all for being here so much. We hope you had a good conversation in your breakout rooms. Thanks to all the Ci3T coaches and the amazing presenters we had tonight. And thank you all for being here.